So next we are sowing greater quaking grass, or Briza maxima. Next, I think it's got to be some twinkly stems of Briza maxima. There we go. I think that looks really nice. Now technically you can sow greater quaking grass. I'm going to call it Briza maxima because it's less of a mouthful. You can sow Briza in the spring. However, I do find that the plants are smaller and they flower a bit later than those in the autumn jump starter. They also can self-seed, but the seeds won't start germinating until the soil temperature is around 18 degrees, which is the temperature inside the greenhouse at this time of the year, which is why it works so well with germinating the seeds under cover. The only problem is that is about the same time of the year as all the weeds are germinating, and because these plants will then be quite delicate and small, I find that they get tangled up with the weeds and it all becomes a bit of a mess. So I much rather sow them now, get great big plugs that will then go in the garden, fight their own corner and bloom beautifully before I replace them with the panicum from the spring grow along. So I've opened the packet and the foil carefully. You get quite a lot of seeds in your packet, and because they're quite big, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip a hole in the compost, and then I'm carefully going to drop one seed as best you can per cell into the 40 cell tray. It makes a change to have something that's a bit easier to handle, doesn't it? And then I'm just going to gently cover them over. There we go. Don't forget your label. Let's pop that in the seed tray. Place the tray up on a bright shelf in the greenhouse. No need for a propagator lid. It is naturally warm and humid enough in here. A quick fast forward about 2 weeks, and you can see here we've got really good germination starting to occur. I'm just carefully taking out my Briza maxima by making sure that I squeeze from underneath, because it's got quite a delicate root system, so you don't want to rip them. Because they're a grass, I am actually going to add a bit of grit to their compost. I haven't really bothered that much with the others, and it doesn't matter if you don't have it, but it will just help with the drainage. I've got one here. Can you see we've got 2 seeds that are germinated in the same cell. They've done actually quite well, but I am going to separate them now. Now, as I said before, you can just get a pair of scissors and snip this one away if you're nervous, but if you're anything like me, 2 plants is better than 1. So I'm just going to very gently tease it apart, making sure that I keep equal amounts of compost around the roots of both plants. There we go. And I'm going to now give them a cell of their own each. Now, Briza you need to be careful with, because if you mother it too much, it can get something called cold shock when we go to plant it in the spring. So what I'm actually going to do, because it's so mild at the moment, is I'm going to pop it outside under the cold frames now. So by the time we come to planting out time, it should barely notice the difference in temperature. I'll reassess the situation if we get a very cold spell, and I possibly might bring them in, but hopefully they shouldn't need it. That can suffer with cold shock if we don't give it a long enough hardening off period, which is why I've downgraded its hardiness ratings. I find if you give it a long, gentle hardening off process, it's much less risk of cold shock. If we put it out in the garden and we suddenly get a very cold spell, then I recommend that we cover it over with horticultural fleece. I find that does do the trick. Cold shock is where the foliage bleaches. It goes yellow, and in extreme situations it can be bleached white, and that's just the plant going into shock because it's been too mollycoddled in the greenhouse over the winter and it's lost some of its hardiness. Also, you remember I said earlier that naturally it won't germinate until the soil temperature is already at 18 degrees, so we're kind of going against Mother Nature a little bit, in which case the plants just need a helping hand. But don't worry, I'll show you. So the plant nursery is almost empty. This is my Briza maxima. So I'm going to plant them en masse because I think that looks really lovely. If you want to, you can plant them in a pot 18 to 20 centimetres apart, so a bit closer than normal. They're very delicate, but they also look great nestled in amongst your spring borders wherever you have a gap. There we go. Looking really very good indeed. Oh, here's the Briza. Look at that. That was worth it, wasn't it, putting the tea down? So I just wanted to show you, this is Briza maxima, and these self-seeded in the spring. And they are really, really lovely. However, this is the same plant from an autumn jump start. What a difference. Look at it. They are absolutely colossal by comparison.